Look at that. We have some Sunday night hoops, some Sunday evening hoops, as we have a 5:30 pregame and a 6 o'clock tip time from Atlanta, where the Sixers begin their back-to-back and the Atlanta Hawks finish off the second leg of their back-to-back on this Sunday evening. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Pregame Show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, along with Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Givens. Bree is with us as always. Good to hang with you in the chat. Derek has this Sunday off.
Congratulations to Derek.
Yes.
After I got a nice Friday night off the other night, spend time with the fam.
And just with the programming note, I have Monday off.
Look at that.
So there you have it, everybody. So good to be with you, though, on this Sunday. We will, of course, get to our pregame picks a little bit later. We'll check in on the starters, see if they have a 47th different starting lineup tonight against the Atlanta Hawks. And we'll check in on the prospects with all the games happening yesterday on our off day. And today, before we got started, we'll check in on that. But Kyle, the way that those guys played the other night and the Sixers getting the moral victory for all of us.
That's all we're hoping for on our end at this stage of the season, right? I know I really admire Winona comes in here every show and it's like,
it's on fire.
Time for a W, baby. Put one in the win column. And like that endless optimism and desire to win, I respect and I understand it. But we are firmly in the camp of we want to see these guys play hard. We even want them to play well. But at the end of the day, our primary concern is draft positioning and the lottery balls and all the other good stuff that is connected to this wonderful March Madness tournament going on right now. And so I think Friday night's game, I caught up with it later. I didn't watch it in real time. So for me, it was just like, oh, they lost. No drama. But I come to find out after I went back and watched the game and did a little investigating, I was like, oh, that one was in some real jeopardy before they, depending on your perspective, either gave it away or came through clutch down the stretch, right? But I mean, like you could go through the box and just point out some big things. Like Justin Edwards continues to have a real surge here.
First time player of the game, Kyle.
Look at that.
On Friday night.
And I think early on, because he was playing in a more star-heavy lineup, right? At least playing off of Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George has not acted like a star, but he is a guy who will have the ball a good bit. We're just looking at Justin for the shot making and, oh, look at that quick release. He's a guy who can get this shot off against just about anybody, and he's confident. He has the 1-2 dribble pull-up. But at the deeper we get into the season, the more we're seeing from him, the more he's been allowed to say, hey, I'm going to work on the drive and kick game. Like had a couple assists in that game, and that was, I think if there was a fun individual player story from this past week, it's that, right? That I think Justin Edwards has shown a little bit more of off the dribble playmaking than he had the rest of the season combined. So that's been a positive development. Yabu has a bounce back game offensively. He's been kind of lost in the woods recently. He has a good game.
You see, like 15 rebounds as well.
He's got, what was it, 20 something, I think, in the game the other night. So
four players with 20 plus.
Yeah.
He was one of them.
Yeah. So those are things that you feel good for those guys. You want to see, especially from the youngest guys like Justin, a little bit of leveling up and preparing for next season. But still, it's like, okay, we're excited that Trae Young is in today because that means it's more likely going to tilt in Atlanta's favor, and that's what we're all kind of hoping for right now.
Just leave our agenda alone. Just let it be what it's going to be. This is a unusual circumstance for the Philadelphia 76ers, especially over the last 8-9 seasons of Joel Embiid's career that he's been on the floor. This is uncharted territory for us to be talking about it this way. And the fact that they could potentially get a top 6 pick. We have not talked about them doing that since the 2018 draft when they landed the 10th overall selection. And we know how all of that went, but it's
not bring that track.
But I'm just, it's not a regular occurrence for the Philadelphia 76ers. So for us here in this particular scenario, again, yes, we love the fact that Nona still wants them to win. Yes, we do want to see them make things competitive, but in the end, for the greater good, these last 12 games, no thank you. Just play hard, put some good film on there for everybody, and let's keep it moving. And the other part too, as Nona says that, and you followed it up, was because, all right, 2 games left, last 2 on the road. We know how getaway games are after you spend so much time on the road. But it is going to be the Pelicans, and the Pelicans played today, so they will be on the second part of their back-to-back.
One too. It was a real battle in Detroit. Actually, is just finishing up now, but they were in that all the way. So those guys will have some tired legs tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. So they'll play on the second night of a back-to-back also tomorrow when they host the 76ers. So those can go either way. But the important part of it, as Nona's saying, let's get this W, and we're saying no, is because let's say they lose this one, but they have some winnable games upcoming against New Orleans tomorrow potentially, the Washington Wizards, Miami Heat 1 hour cooling off segment on Friday because they've now lost 10 games in a row, Kyle. So that doesn't look like a lock for Miami at that point. And then Toronto.
They are a mess right now.
And then Toronto is right behind them. So after tonight, this 4-game stretch that they have coming up, we were talking worst case scenario on Friday. They could go 3-1 over that stretch.
It's very possible.
Right, exactly. So that's why tonight, sorry, Nona, with all due respect for this one, you got to go down. Play competitive, but you got to go down because you got to keep that agenda what the agenda is.
I cannot repeat the exact words on this show, but I always think of, in these situations, Marcellus Wallace talking to Bruce Willis's character in Pulp Fiction saying, that's just your pride messing with you, right. We'll say. Everyone can infer what they think that word is that is used in the movie by, that's Ving Rhames, I believe.
Yes, it is.
The great Ving Rhames.
It was actually on yesterday. Yeah.
So, I mean that on the organizational level, right? Obviously, we want Quentin Grimes, Justin Edwards, Yabu, all these guys to go out, compete, play hard, do their best. But Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse, that's just your pride messing with you. You go down in the 5th, as Ving Rhames once said.
That's right. You go down in the 5th. And that's where the Sixers were on Friday night. They played well. They even took the lead where they took the points in the 4th round, man. They were getting after it, but in the 5th, they went down. They got knocked out in the 5th, and that's exactly how we wanted it to see. And that's where we need things to play out today. But look, on the positive side of things that have happened for the 76ers, talking about Edwards, the bounce-back game there that you had with Yabusele. We didn't even talk about Ricky having a really good game off the bench where I think he had close to 22, 23, like 7 rebounds, and he was really confident. He just looked confident out there. For the way that we haven't seen him play as of late. The other day when you wrote your recap for the game before, I think he was like 1-for-11.
Yeah, he was, and we were talking about it. He looked like the true tank commander.
Yes.
Right? Like every time he could do something to hurt their chance to win, it felt like he did, right? Whether it was a missed shot or he's just driving into traffic kind of aimlessly. We know that he's a good rebounder when he's in a groove and he's playing well, but not timing his jumps, not boxing out, not rotating off ball, whatever it was. The prior game, he was a complete train wreck and really has not had a good close to the season as he's been asked to scale up his role, play more of a prominent role in the rotation and a nightly role in the rotation rather than you might be in, you might be out. You might have to go down to the G League just to get some situational minutes here and there. So yeah, I'm sure for him, it was nice to at least get some kind of bounce back game. Obviously he played really well. One of his best games of the year last season was in San Antonio. So I don't know if it's something about it. Maybe he gets a good night's sleep in San Antonio the night before. And so he's all revved up, or it's something with the lighting or the arena, whatever it is. Got to transfer that energy from San Antonio to every other city and arena around the league, Ricky.
Yeah, and it was just good to see him playing that way and doing that type of stuff because, look, there's a fear, there might be a concern that he might be falling out of favor a little bit in the organization with the way he's been playing as of late. So he needed something like that in that game on Friday, making that great whip around one-handed, left-handed pass to Nick Batum in the corner to knock down that 3 in the second overtime against the Spurs so they can walk away with that victory. So San Antonio's been good to Ricky Council. And, of course, 25 easy as he's been doing for Quentin Grimes, just another 25. Kyle, he has scored 25-plus in every game except 2 in the month of March and averaging that 28 points. So Quentin Grimes just continues to play at a high level, averaging now 21 points on the season in the Sixers uniform in the 19 games that he has played. And yes, he's the third leading scorer on the team. He has played less than Paul George. He's played less than Tyrese Maxey. He's right around that number that Joel Embiid finished at with the overall games played. He's going to surpass. Yeah, Joel actually played 19, so Grimes will pass him with tonight's game of games played. But what
a season!
He is third on the team in scoring with 22 points per game for the job that he has done. But as we talked about, at 33 minutes and just shooting overall from the field, 50% from the floor in the Sixers uniform, and 39.3 from three. Just continued. Now, it was a little bit later as the numbers started to pile up a little bit more. I mean, he had a game, but it got to the 25 later in that contest. But just continue his strong play, and at some point, like we talked about, maybe the 5-6 games at the end of the season might just wrap it up for him.
Yeah, I mean, the front office has got to be sitting there like, all right, bro, you made your point. Like,
but right? You keep playing him.
Like, yeah, like you're certainly not rooting against the player playing well, but when you know that he's got restricted free agency coming up, and you're like, all right, he was having a good year in Dallas, and so we were a little surprised that he got moved in the first place. We were happy with the what they gave up and what they got back. Got a younger player who's more productive this season. But part of it, from the organizational standpoint, is you think, okay, I think we'll probably be able to keep him on a fairly reasonable number, and maybe that's still the case. But like with each passing game where he's putting up an easy 25, it's like, geez, man, like how long can this go on for? So it's a good problem to have. You have a guy who has far outperformed your expectations. The only danger is if there's one team that emerges in the offseason that just says, we'll pay you a ton of money, right? Like we'll just go well over the moon. Like, I mean, Brooklyn would be the one example because I think they can have a ton of cap space, like maybe $80 million in cap space this summer. And while I wouldn't say that using that on Quentin Grimes is one of the most likely scenarios, like I think they would probably aim for, see if you can get a couple of big names in there or even one big name and then, maybe someone like Grimes. But unless they're really splashing the cash around, I don't see the natural suitor that takes him into crazy money. You just might have to pay more than you thought when you got him at the deadline. And like, will the front office and ownership be thrilled about that? No. Does it impact like how we evaluate him? No. He's a good basketball player who I think has more than proven he's got a future with this organization. And that's like, we're going to get to draft prospects, I think, in a second. It almost doesn't matter who they take, right? Like, I think he is just a guy that fits with all kinds of combinations of players. So maybe that impacts how much you're willing to give him, right? Like if you keep a top 3 pick and you're trying to develop a guard or whatever, like does that impact, hey, maybe there's a walkaway price for us? Sure. But I think in most instances he's back and he's a pretty important piece of the future for this team.
And don't forget, the draft is before free agency, so we'll see how all that certainly plays out when that selection happens. The one thing about Brooklyn, as you say that, it just immediately made me think once again about Allen Crabbe and the big number. So maybe they won't try to spend different ownership, but maybe they won't throw, because they threw $80 million, I believe, at Allen Crabbe that year. So we'll see.
That one aged like milk, unfortunately. Good for Allen Crabbe, but
set, but maybe not so much for the Brooklyn Nets. We will see, though. Grimes, you would suspect that he'll have another good game today, so we'll see what things look like for Quentin Grimes and the Sixers upcoming here shortly against the Atlanta Hawks. Hawks on the second night of a back-to-back, Sixers first for them. All right, let's get to the prospect watch.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, we started this, of course, last week. We continued it on Kyle's night off on Friday. We were off yesterday, so we will update at least one of the prospects from yesterday's game in our prospect watch. Who we go with first here, Bree? Let's take a peek at Liam McNeely and the UConn Huskies falling to the Florida Gators this afternoon. That was a really good game this afternoon, but he put up 22 in that game, Kyle. Liam McNeely, the freshman. Now, we brought him up because he's just one to watch, depending on how combine measurements go, individual workouts, things of that nature go. He's a little bit further back in the lottery. But should they decide that maybe they want to move back, or he just starts to elevate himself and push himself up a little bit in the lottery. We've talked about a 6'6", 6'7" frame. The shooting ability, can still put the ball on the floor as well. But a guy that on a team like the Sixers especially, you can kind of just plug in and let him do the stuff that he does.
Well, you know what I took away from that game? Boy, the missed rebounds at the end of that game, he'll fit right in with the Sixers because he had a good game scoring the basketball, hit some big shots, but they had 2 critical rebounds that they gave up on missed free throws for Florida, both of which it was either him or he's in the vicinity. And Florida turned those into second chance points. I think one of them was they got more free throws. The other one was a putback dunk to go up by 8, and that was essentially the end of the game. So I just had some like PTSD flashbacks to PJ Tucker against the Sixers, or when they played the Knicks last season in the playoffs, and it's just Josh Hart over and over and over and over again. So yeah, mostly good performance from him, but that final 8 minutes or so was, oof, that was bad.
Yeah, so 22, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals in 36 minutes in the UConn Huskies 2-point loss to the Florida Gators this afternoon. Good game, good prospect. We'll see how things play out for him. Next up, we have the Duke boys. We only put the main one, but the others we'll talk about. But Flag, this afternoon, they really handled Baylor, man. And Baylor, we'll talk about VJ Edgecombe as we discuss these guys too. But Flag finished with 18, 9, and 6 in 29 minutes. So no questions again about the ankle. He looks just fine.
And that was one where I think, clearly took his foot off the gas at some point in that game. Or maybe that's not fair. I think it was more that he was willing to defer. In the first half, he dominated that game. He had 15 at halftime. And early, they were clearly looking to get him in mismatches, on post-ups, because I thought the story of that game was just that Duke was so much bigger than Baylor. Like, they were a physically imposing team in ways that Baylor had just no chance to respond to. Like, Flag got Edgecombe on a post-up, and it's like, what is he supposed to do in that scenario? He's shooting right over him. He took the foul. I believe that was Edgecombe's second foul, so that impacted the rest of his first half. But that first half, you saw everything. It was the post-ups, face-up moves. He made touch passes in transition. You saw him hit a pull-up 3, which that's one of the big – you need him to shoot threes in general, but if he hits pull-up 3s with any regularity, that's like a completely different level for him. So that was an excellent game for him, but also an excellent game for that entire Duke team, right? Like, they have been pretty comfortably, after 2 games now, the most impressive team in the tournament. Now, that was a matchup that was kind of tailor-made for them. I was worried for VJ and for Baylor going into that game, but credit to them for taking care of business. I think there are a lot of Sixers fans who are now like, who's this Proctor kid? Get him on the Sixers. And it's like, maybe slow your roll a little bit, but somebody to watch maybe in like the second round, top of the second round, or maybe we'll see what happens with the rest of this tournament if he can improve his stock more than that. Yeah,
he had 25, so easy to decide to make those passes for Flag and everybody else when he's just been on a tear these last 2 games, these first 2 games. He was 7 for 8 from 3, Tyrese Proctor was in this one. Maluak finished with 8 and 5. He had 2 blocks in this one. Only took 3 shots, a couple of finishing alley-oop, of course, from Flag, 23 minutes, but he looked solid again. He looked like the big man that we continue to talk about that's going to be one of those top 10 picks.
Yeah. Look, he's just huge, right? And so as we bring up the size gap between those 2 teams, Maluak's a big part of that. If Baylor had a chance to turn the corner, all right, maybe you're able to beat that first level of defense, and then Maluak's at the rim, and you also have maybe Flag is pinching in from the corner, and all of a sudden it's like, geez, you have a 7'2" guy and a 6'9" forward, and you're like a 6'3" or shorter, perhaps, guard attacking the rim. That's not a pretty sight. And Duke did a really good job just as a team of contract, expand. Never felt like they gave up anywhere more than like a few open threes. Like, most of the jumpers that Baylor took were contested. and inside the arc was a lot more difficult. So while that's not all Malawak, he's a big part of why they were able to do that. I still, for a guy who would go as high as they'd have to take him, save for a trade back, I still think that he is too offensively limited for me. Like, he is purely a play finisher, but defensively, really significant talent.
Yeah, yep. So Malawak there, and Knipple this afternoon, sorry. He only took 5 shots, 27 minutes, but, made 2 threes, 12 points. You already know he can shoot. Maybe a little bit slower than most of us would like, and especially at that number 6 pick, to your point. I don't know if I'm willing to take him at 6. Maybe if you had maybe the 9th overall or the 8th overall, and depending on how he shot in, let's say, an individual workout that he had with the Sixers where he just blew them away with his outside shooting.
Yeah.
Just another game. But look, we have another opportunity to see them again, so it doesn't stop here. They're already advanced to the Sweet 16, so we'll see them next Thursday, Friday, whatever the matchup is, and we'll see what happens there from Saturday and Sunday if they advance to the Elite Eight. But just good overall play. Once again, it's a really good Duke team. All 3 of them keeping an eye on. VJ Edgecombe in a loss against this basketball team. VJ Edgecombe finished with a team best 16 points on 6 of 12 shooting. Struggled from behind the three-point line. He was 1 for 5. Did grab 6 boards. Got to the free throw line 5 times. Missed 2 of those while Kyle and I were watching before we got here. He missed 1 there. Down 20, but as Kyle said in the moment, every point counts. So you gotta hit that free throw there. But just the stuff that we continue. We're not overreacting. We're not thinking, oh, this guy had a bad game, so now he's off the board. It's just a VJ Edgecombe game. It sucks that this was the last one that we got a chance to see him until we get to some of the workouts and combine measurements and interviews and all, and then we'll see him at the draft. But just two decent enough games for him for the lasting impression of the player before we get to see him in an NBA uniform.
So I think this game in particular showed it's very much an eye of the beholder game, right? Because I think the flashes that you were able to see, he had a offensive putback on a second jump where it's like on his second jump for a rebound, he was up higher and quicker than anybody else on the floor. It's a athletic play that like nobody else on the floor can make. And that's against a Duke team that is probably the best team currently playing, is loaded with All-Americans and talent. And like, he's still able to pop in that way. And then in the second half, as the game got a little out of hand, they finally started running some stuff for him to get him rolling, like take advantage of him as a slasher. And like, that stuff's all well and good. The other side of it, though, is that despite the fact that he had a good or a decent box score game, I would say, it's like you can see the limitations he has as a creator, right? I don't think he has the strongest handle. And there were times in that game where when he saw that length we were talking about at the rim, he would stop in no man's land. So let's say, 14, 16 feet out. And not because he's stopping to rise up to take a shot, but because he doesn't know what he wants to do with the ball. And that's a product of poor spacing, number one, good Duke defense, but also just his limitations with his skill set. We had some people who were in our diehard Discord today who were not satisfied with what they saw from him and are skeptical about him as a top 5 pick based on that game. And I can understand that based on that game. I think what I would caution people against is like, you can't take that game, which is a horrific matchup for Edgecombe and his entire team, against a team that is just better than them, but also best equipped to stop them, and say, well, this kid will not work. And I do think it also shows that's the difficulty of evaluating these prospects, right? Like, how much of it is VJ is not a good enough ball handler to be a top prospect, and how much of it is he's in a bad environment to take advantage of that, right? Because there might be a future where he plays in a much more spread out NBA, right? Like further 3-point line, better teammates, better shooters, better spacing, and his athletic tools and his ability to go from 0 to 60 in a short period of time, that takes over more than the other stuff. So it didn't change my overall eval of him, but I think for people who are only just getting acquainted with Edgecombe, that shows you kind of both sides of how you have to look at him as a player.
I've seen 2 or 3 in our chat saying I'm out on VJ. To your point, right?
But that's what I mean. So and look,
right.
Not everybody's going to sit and watch 15 to 20 or more games of a college prospect to develop their opinion. These tournament games hold a lot of weight. I'm not even saying to say that they shouldn't, right? Because one of the eval things that I regret was, you remember when De'Aaron Fox played Lonzo Ball in the tournament and just dog walked him for the whole game?
Yep.
That's one that at the time I should have been like, you know what? They're similar tiers of prospect, right? Like they're in the same general. And I should have taken that as a stronger indicator that I did. Because I was like, man, he came to just take this guy out back and beat the hell out of him. And those are things that you definitely take note of.
Yep, absolutely. So one more. I think we have one more, and it was from yesterday's game where my sleeper pick to get to the Elite Eight, the BYU Kevin Youngs.
The fighting Kevin Youngs.
Yes, they advanced. And, man, watching them, reason why I said maybe a sleeper to get. No, look, they're a 6 seed, so it's not that difficult for a team like a 6 seed. But, yeah, again, a 6 seed knocking off a 3 seed Wisconsin Badgers team where they were given a lot of trouble there. But, man, Igor finished with 11-8-8 in that game, but they spread the wealth. There's Richie Saunders had the big game box score wise with the 25, but they really do spread the wealth. And you can see around, you can see that they have a NBA coach coaching
100%. I think that's the thing that jumps out the most watching them is like they run NBA stuff. And like Kevin is trying to do his best with what he has. That team's going to get much better in the years ahead. Like they're getting a big time recruit to lead the class next year. I think with Igor, you see exactly what he is, right? He has probably the best vision in the class. I think mechanically he's also the best passer in the class. And when you combine that with his height, that's pretty special. Unfortunately, his shot has just been bleh for most of the season. I actually talked with a scout who said he had reworked his shot coming into the year and had that early success that we talked about at the start of the season, but has kind of regressed into what his shot previously was. And so that's something to kind of be aware of and keep an eye on. So that's the swing skill for him, because I'm concerned about the ability for teams to double and trap him, and he has not dealt with better athleticism, better physicality as well as you would like him to. Once they got into conference play, he struggled quite a bit. But if the shot is there, it makes it so much harder to do that. So I don't know. He's an interesting prospect. But, friend of the show, Kevin Young, good job out there in BYU.
Absolutely. He kind of reminds me a little bit of the Josh Giddey experience with the
little bit
that slower pace, under control stuff, but it could get you in trouble at times. But we talked about Josh Giddey a couple of weeks ago, where he's just been on a roll, on a tear, and that continues. Almost had a quadruple double last night in their blowout win over the LA Lakers. All right, we'll keep the prospect watch going post game, because there are a couple of prospects playing now and a little bit later. So during our post game, we'll update you on those. Like Mellow 3-Pointers asking about Derek Queen. We'll talk about Derek Queen because they play here in a little bit in the NCAA tournament. Let's get to the Sixers starters. I believe they have a 47th different starting lineup tonight, and that is correct. Yabu, the same front court with Yabusele, Okeke, and Edwards, but instead of Jared Butler with Quentin Grimes in the backcourt, it's Jeff Doughton. They got to space out his games because of the two-way contract that he has. So he gets to start. Therefore, it's the 47th different starting lineup tonight for the Philadelphia 76ers. And, okay, we said we might see them. Here we are.
I believe, by the way, I saw the record for a season is 51 different lineups.
Yeah.
They're approaching it. They're approaching it. We shall see.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So they're just keeping up with their overall record of what it is right now, sitting there with 23-47, I believe it is, 23-47 on the season. Let's get to our pregame picks, courtesy of Bet365, our pregame pick segment brought to you by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. What do we put together here? Plus 200. Quentin Grimes, 4.5 assists over. He's been passing the ball a lot, even though he's scoring his 25 plus. And with that, I'm still going to go with it. I was like, you know what? That's not a bad number. Let me go with that one on the 4.5. Let's see if he gets that one with George Niang, who was hot last night, scoring 20 plus off the bench, making about 6 threes for the Hawks, over 2.5 threes made. He did not play well against the Sixers the last time out when the Hawks beat them on the 10th. And so I suspect he wants to do the same as he did last night in this one against his former team. That's a plus 200. And so go ahead at Bet365, take advantage of that. And let's see if we get another one. We hit it on Friday. Let's see if we can nail another one here tonight at courtesy of Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. By the way, if you make your bets for the later games in the tournament, plus 32, a boosted plus 32 for you for the bets that you make at Bet365 for the NCAA tournament games tonight. That'll do it for us here on the pregame show. We'll be back post-game. Let's see if the Sixers snap their 3-game losing streak or make it a game, but extend it to 4 losses in a row against this Atlanta Hawks team as they host them on the front end now for the Sixers of a back-to-back. For Kyle and Bree, I'm Devon. We'll be back after the game to talk about Sixers Hawks right here on the PHLY Sixers post-game show presented by Bet365. Enjoy.
We all silly like the mayor.